Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Earl Rush for the Real Fellas Talk Sports Show. I'll be your moderator for tonight, joining David Burnett in Indianapolis. David, how you doing?
Doing well, Earl. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm going to go over to my main man, Kevin Edmonson for Atlanta. Kevin, how are you doing?
Doing great, Earl. Thanks for asking.
Okay, thank you. So we got a lot to cover, so I'm not going to try to be funny or witty. We're going to get straight to the point. We want to start off and talk about the passing of the great John Thompson, who was a cultural icon for sure. He was an activist, a father figure, a great coach, a great man on and off the court. He will be remembered as much for what he did off the court as well as he did on the court. He was definitely a winner for sure in life. David, can you elaborate on some of your memories of Georgetown's success or John Thompson's activities in the sports world?
John Thompson, it's hard to put into words just how impactful he was in totality. This is a man who really, I think the way to best describe him is he did things his way. He did it his way and successfully, and it's part of the reason why he's quintessential DC. The city really embraced him because he's truly of the city of Washington, D.C. The guy was a star at Archbishop Carroll, went to Providence College, went to the Celtics. Now, unfortunately, going to the Celtics and being a backup to Bill Russell, not the best place to be, but he decided he wanted to be a coach. And he coached St. Anthony's to one of the best records in the city. And Georgetown picked him straight up, and he transformed a Georgetown program that was nothing. He built it in his own image, and he did it his way. And that's one of the things that's really marvelous about John Thompson. He did things his way. He had a program that he wanted, molded it in his own image, and he molded men. And I think that's why he's so admired and so respected.
All right, Kevin, what are your thoughts on the life of John Thompson?
Well, being a DC guy, growing up in DC, Big John, they used to call him. He's like the godfather of DC basketball, custodian of DC basketball. DC is a small city, and the basketball community is really well connected. So all the major players, they all know each other. One of the things that stood out about John Thompson was he was very, we got this whole social justice thing going on now, but he was way ahead of the curve on that. He advocated for Black players. He advocated for Black youth. I remember him doing interviews defending his team where they were trying to call him a racist because he had all Black players. When in actuality, all he was doing, what the white schools were doing, they were just bringing in white players. He was just bringing in Black players. So he was way ahead of the curve. Now, first time I met John Thompson, I only met John Thompson in person one time, and it was an interesting experience. I think I was 15 or 16 years old playing CYO basketball. And anybody with the Catholic school knows about CYO basketball. So we used to practice in St. Anthony's gym. So one day the coach says, St. Anthony's team is coming into scrimmages. And we're like, what? We're like, what? So he walks in, about 15 dudes. He has JV in his varsity, 6'9" Merlin Wilson, 6'7" Phil Showman, Johnny Smith. The whole squad. The tallest guy we had was about 6'1". They beat the brakes off of us. I mean, they just ran. And St. Anthony's gym was no bigger than a cracker box. So if you went out of bounds, you hit your head against the wall. Man, they beat us so bad, it was unbelievable. And the thing was, funny thing was, he didn't care. All he wanted to do was practice his sets, make his team better. He didn't care how bad they trounced us.
Right.
It was all over. He shook our hands, thanked us, and went on about his business. I was like, dang.
Yeah, that's John Thompson doing things his way.
Yeah, that's the one time I met him personally, and like I said, a lot of respect to Big John.
Yeah, one of the things I was very impressed with is the fact that 75 out of the 77 students on his team that stayed 4 years graduated. That's very impressive, and the fact that he coached 4 Hall of Famers: Allen Iverson, Dikembe Mutombo, Alonzo Mourning, and Patrick Ewing. I mean, what else can you say?
Yeah. He's gonna be missed.
One of the things that I regret most about the life of John Thompson, I was around him a lot, but I never really got a chance to spend time with him and talk to him. If I had to do things all over again, because he would come to the TV station every Sunday night. I was the anchor of the weekend show, but he would come on and do his sports show with Steve Buckhantz, and he'd come in. His presence was such that, it's like, hey, let's leave Big John alone. I regret that because he had so much to give. And, I got a chance to speak to him all the time, but I never really had a chance to dialogue with a man of that profound magnitude. I regret that.
Okay. All right. Looking good. All right. So the great man has passed, and, we celebrate his life. We're going to move on to the NBA playoffs, and we got so much to talk about today. I'm trying to figure out where we need to go first. Well, first of all, tonight is a big game with the Houston Rockets playing Oklahoma City in Game 7, and we're going to find out who's going to the playoffs, the next round, and who's going salsa dancing with you, Kevin. So, Boston's up 2-0 over Toronto. Let's get back to the first game first. I'm going all over the place. Let's deal with Houston and Oklahoma City tonight. Who's the pressure on? Is it on Westbrook? Is it on Harden? Is it on D'Antoni? Who's the pressure on, and what do you guys think is going on?
I think the pressure is on Chris Paul. Chris Paul has never won anything. He is still arguably the best point guard that's come along in the last 15 years. But he hasn't won. And in big games, in critical games, he's not there. He's either been injured or played poorly. Tonight, I'm going to look to see whether he's going to be able to deliver. Same thing I can say to a lesser extent with James Harden, who in big games himself, in playoffs, has often not been there. And those two guys were teammates last year. So to me, it's a Harden, Chris Paul, who is going to be the man tonight. And whichever player in my mind plays the best tonight, that team is going to win. If it's Chris Paul, OKC is going to win. If it's James Harden, Houston's going to win.
Mr. Edmonson, your thoughts on this Game 7 between Houston and Oklahoma?
Well, to quote the words of Terrell Owens, get your popcorn ready, baby. This is going to be a barn burn tonight. It's going to be like so much is on the line. James Harden's legacy, Russell Westbrook standing, CP3's revenge. I mean, it's Dennis Schrader's comeuppance. It's so much. There's so many different storylines going on tonight. But I tell you, no matter who, I'm counting on Houston winning. Even though I think CP3, I'm not counting on him choking. I don't think they have enough to beat Houston. But then again, I'm really disappointed in Houston. And it doesn't make a difference who wins this game. LA is going to trounce them both. I mean, if Houston can't get past OKC, they don't stand a chance against the Lakers. I'm just sorry.
Oh, my.
It's not even.
Oh, my.
It's going to be a sweep.
Kevin.
OKC is Chris Paul and a bunch of kids. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Okay.
And they can't dispose of these guys. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just very disappointing performance by the Rockets.
All right. Well,
I don't know about that. I don't know if it is Houston. It's also a test of Mike D'Antoni's small ball system, and will it work? So far, it's working. Partly because you've got shooters that can nail that 3-point shot. Houston is shooting, sometimes 40 and 50 3-point shots. Let's just do the math. You hit 30 3-point shots and somebody else hits 30 2-point shots. There's a numerical difference. And so Mike D'Antoni has created a system that works well. He's sort of transformed basketball, and other teams are playing very similar in a way. And if you cannot hit the 3-pointer these days, you're not going to be very successful. I'm not so sure the Lakers, whoever they play, are that good at the 3-point shot.
Well, David, I'll say this. People like stats. I do the eye test.
Okay.
And if Dennis Schrader's giving you 36, you're in trouble. I'm sorry. The Hawks traded him. And if you can't check Dennis Schrader, come on. The eye test to me says the Rockets are in trouble. They're small ball. I think Anthony Davis will probably average 50 on the Rockets easily. I mean, that's if Anthony Davis, who has never done anything in the playoffs, shows up.
Well,
when he got some midgets checking him, you're going to see him get 50. Watch.
What do you think, Earl?
Well, we'll get to the Lakers in a bit. Tonight, I think that Oklahoma City is winning. If Houston made a mistake by letting them get to the 7th game. And as Kevin said, I don't have anything against Dennis Schrader, whatever his name is. I don't mean no disrespect. If he scores 36, come on. They got problems. And that boy, what's it, Gilchrist, the other two guys, he's not as bad as, he's not getting as credit as people need to give him. That boy can play.
Absolutely.
Oklahoma City tonight. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on because we got a whole lot of games to cover in a short time. Who would have thought? No, let's talk about Murray and Donovan Mitchell's battle. It was an epic battle for the last 3 games. What do you guys think about that? Kevin, can you elaborate on what your thoughts on that?
I thought it was one of the best one-on-one give and take battles I've seen in a long time, as far as two players going back and forth with each other. Even they weren't checking each other at all times, but just, putting up the numbers they put up. I thought it was good eye candy, but it also showed me that nobody in the current NBA plays defense. So that's one of my problems. This is just a run and shoot fest. It's nobody plays defense. But Denver was another one of those teams that I think when we first started, I pegged them as a dark horse. When I talked about teams finishing in the playoffs, I thought there was the Lakers, Clippers, and watch out for the Nuggets. But now, they sorely disappointed me. I mean, just like the last series we talked about, Utah never should have taken them to this limit. Utah is not that good. They got one player, and not David's wannabe center, all-pro center, Rudy Gobert. They got Donovan Mitchell and nothing else, and they took them to 7 games, which to me says Denver's got some big holes. Big holes.
David, it's on you, brother.
Looking forward to. It's hard to say. I mean, kind of, looking at the way these teams are going to play, I don't know. I mean, for instance, for me, the game to really look for, that I've been watching has been the Celtics and the Raptors. You know, I don't mean to switch teams on you that quickly. But
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you what that got to do with the Mitchell and with the Mitchell Murray.
All right, let me go back. I'm so sorry. Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray. To me, in Game 7, they didn't come through. They didn't really come through, either one. I mean, they had great games leading up to it, but I think both teams were very tight. Both teams were very tight, and it showed. And for the game to come down to a last second 3-point shot that Utah needed. You know, you had the wrong man actually shooting the ball. You know, Mike Conley's not the guy supposed to be shooting a 3-pointer to win the game. You know, that should have been Donovan Mitchell. But a 70-point game between those two teams, and they've been easily scoring over 100 points. You know, so it was somewhat of a disappointing game, and both of the big stars didn't play to their max. I think they faced a seventh game. And I'm not going to say they choked, but it was a hard game for those two guys. And if one of them had shown up to the level that they had been playing, had one of them had 30 or 40 points, that team would have won. But both of them played much below what they had been doing. And the teams needed the energy. Denver was very fortunate to win. The one guy that did show up was Nikola Jokic. He's an all-star. You know, he's an all-pro, and he showed up with more than 30 points. And he's a big man that can handle the ball. He can pass. He's well-rounded. You know, he brings the best of what European basketball is about.
Okay. All right. Let me get back to what I had asked Kevin. I thought it was a great battle between the two guards on the team. And as far as Mike Conley being the one to take the last shot, David, they should not even have had a last shot. Denver should have just held the ball. They were already up, so they didn't even need to go down and score. So who should have took the last shot? That's moot because they shouldn't even have been.
I can buy that.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the NBA playoffs. As we stand, we're just waiting for the winner of tonight's game. David, are you surprised about Boston being up 2-0 on Toronto?
In hindsight, no. I'm a Toronto guy, but to be honest with you, Boston has showed me a little bit more than what I thought they had. They have a lot of determination and grit, and I know I tried to force that as the talking point just a little while ago, but that was a game that really intrigued me because you see some players not being what they needed to be, and you've got them. It's a make or miss league. Mark Jackson talks about that a lot, and Toronto is not hitting shots. Van Vliet, he looks scared to me. He's not. When he has a chance to take a 3-pointer, Toronto needs him to be the 3-point shooter he's been, but he's passing up shots. He's passing off. He looks intimidated, and they need him to be a lot stronger. And maybe it's because they got small guards. Sometimes, at some point, you got 2 6-foot guards in a league where where most of the backcourt is 6'4", 6'5". Sometimes maybe the truth hurts you.
Okay, Kevin, what do you think about the situation that's going on here?
Well, one of the things that's truism in the NBA is that matchups matter. And to follow what David just said, I think Toronto's mini-me backcourt is getting exposed. I like Fred VanVleet, but let's be real. He's not an all-star. He's not a real starter. I just keep it real. And you got two mini-me guards. I think the matchups are really difficult for Toronto. And if Pascal Siakam is being neutralized by Jaylen Brown, Toronto's in trouble. I just think that, Kyle Lowry's got to play outstanding. Siakam's got to play outstanding. And Ojinobi, who's showing a lot, has to play over his head. I mean, because Toronto, I mean, they're just the matchups just don't seem to favor them right now.
I would agree with that. Or at this point, that's the way it looks. But Boston, you talk about somebody who's got some, who's got pressure. Boston's got some pressure on them, and at some point, they're going to have to get, to that final, to the championship series. They haven't gotten there yet, and maybe this is their time. Maybe this is their time, because Milwaukee certainly is looking like they're being exposed by Miami.
I am shocked that Boston is up 2-0. I believed that Toronto had a deeper bench. I don't think either one of them have a legitimate big man, and I know the game is evolving around small ball. I got that. But when at the end of the finals of these playoffs, you're going to need a big man. Neither one of them have them, but I am shocked that Boston is up 2-0. And it's obvious that Toronto's in trouble. We're going to move on. Kevin, is tonight a must game when Miami plays Alzheimer's Sydney, Kevin?
The Bucks and the Heat, Earl. That's what you want to talk about?
When the Bucks and the Heat play,
Hey, I've been waiting for you to ask me that question.
Is it a must game? Is it a must game for the tip for them to win?
I think every game is a must game, but I'll tell you what. One thing, like I talked about matchups, and the one thing that the Heat are doing is they're exposing Milwaukee's Achilles heel. And I'll use an analogy. You guys remember Don Haskins, the Texas Southern coach?
Right.
So he was doing an interview one time, and a reporter asked him, he says, well, Don, what type of players do you like to recruit? He says in his Texas voice, I like to recruit guys who's hard to guard. And that's the problem with Milwaukee. Their small ball lineup cannot check Miami's small ball lineup. Goran Dragic, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, they're just killing Milwaukee's small ball lineup. And you can't really, because you have a guy like Robinson out there, you can't double team people because you can't leave him open. So it's one-on-one, and one-on-one, they're just killing Milwaukee small guys.
Well, right now, the Heat are beating the Bucks by 8 points as we speak.
I'm kind of watching and at the same time.
David, what do you? I mean,
well, I think we haven't. Probably all of us haven't fully given Miami their due. One thing, I saw Miami more times, the sweep that they had over my Pacers was eye-opening to me because I hadn't really watched them that closely. One thing that they have that you got to have in the NBA these days, they have shooters. They have a bunch of guys that can hit shots. And that's, for a team to make it to the championship round, or to win it all, you've got to be able to make shots. Miami can make shots. They got a bunch of guys that can not only hit three-pointers, but can hit mid-range jumpers. Jimmy Butler has heart, and they got at least 4 guys that can nail a three-pointer when you ask them to. And that's about 2 more than most teams.
Okay.
One thing I was going to say, another thing that's standing out in the series, I don't know, like, this is a must-win game for the Bucks. But one thing that's standing out for the series, I think Eric Spoelstra is coaching his butt off, and he's out coaching Budenholzer. And that's why I think Spoelstra should have got more credit for Coach of the Year than he did, because right now he's got a game plan on Antetokounmpo that's basically leaving the Bucks like standing still right now. It's a close game, but I just think he's out coaching Budenholzer right now.
Right.
I agree. I would agree with that.
You guys remember last week? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. We'll run it back. I had picked Miami to win this series. So
You did?
Yes, I did.
You
Yeah,
did?
yeah. I did. I said it. But
Was that an Earl guarantee?
it was no guarantee. I had to pick it, But
It was an Earl guarantee wild call, like Barkley.
Okay.
I just thought to be honest with you, I've never really thought that much of Milwaukee. I don't care that they had the worst. They had the best record in the league. for the last 2 years. I just never, except for Antetokounmpo, I can't even pronounce his name. Right?
You did a pretty good job there.
Except for him, they don't really have too much. The next guy, the second guy on this team, Middleton, I can't even believe they gave that boy all that money they gave him, because I could go down the street right now, Urban Coalition, and poke 5 people and score better than Middleton. So
wow,
I am not surprised.
Wow.
Surprised that he was an all-star last year. I didn't get it. They don't have a player. Eric Bledsoe, it was a milk carton somewhere. You haven't seen him anywhere. So, he doesn't really have a lot of help. But what I want to ask you guys, do you think if the Bucks don't win, their big star will look to leave?
Well, I don't think necessarily he's going to leave. I mean, keep in mind, here's a guy from Greece. He grew up in Greece. Milwaukee has been good to him. I think, and again, the way the NBA salary situation works, Milwaukee can still pay him more than anywhere else. And I don't think that he's so attracted to going to an LA, going to a New York, just because it's them. I think he's 7 or 8 seasons now in Milwaukee. Why not stay there? He's a star there. He's embraced there. If he was an American player playing at this level, he might be tempted to go to New York. But I think he may be just as comfortable in Milwaukee, where he grew. Nobody expected that Giannis would become this good. In fact, when he was drafted, he was only 6'9". He grew 2 inches. And so his game transformed over the years. He got better and better and better every year. He wasn't, they do.
I'll tell you what I see. I see if the Heat beat the Bucks, I see a replay of Kevin Durant in Golden State. That's what I see.
What do you mean by that?
That's what I see. I see him.
You think Giannis is going to go to the Golden State?
I do it just what Kevin Durant did. If you can't beat him, join him. That's the scenario I see happening.
We'll have to let time show that. We'll see.
Pat Riley's trying to work that right now. I'm telling you.
Yeah, the sources are saying that he's trying to. I guess they'd be tampering if they said that's what they're trying to do. That would be one of the places, and if he goes to Miami or Golden State, it's going to be trouble for everybody. That's for sure.
We will have to see. I think he stays in Milwaukee.
All right. Well,
still a close game now.
Let's get these matchups straight. So, Denver goes on to play the Lakers, correct?
Yes.
The winner of Utah. No, Denver beat Utah. The winner of tonight's game, Houston and Oklahoma, will play the Clippers, correct?
Correct.
We got
the other way around.
No, Lakers play Houston. Nuggets play Clippers.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why I said the Lakers are going to pounce. They're going to trounce the Rockets.
Yeah, they're going to trounce.
Kevin.
So we got Boston.
Kevin.
Playing Toronto. And the Bucks. Who's going to advance to the next rounds?
Well, Boston, I think, has a good chance of winning that series. If you're up 2-0, you're 2 games to the good, and they have one of the best coaches. Now I'm gonna be a homer again.
Uh-oh.
You know how I am. Brad Stevens, the coach of the Celtics, is a Central Indiana, which is Indianapolis guy. So he's a heck of a coach. But he's got something to prove too.
Okay, so who are we picking? Who's going to the finals? Let's cut it down even more. We can't go over each quarterfinal, semifinal game. Who do you guys see?
I'm picking LA teams for the Western Conference Final.
LA teams? Come on.
For the Western Conference Finals.
Okay, for the conference finals.
I don't know. I have no idea in the East because everybody's playing so shaky. I have no idea.
I think if Boston makes it through and it's Boston, Miami, Boston has the shooters to match Miami's shooters. And they have Spoelstra has won a couple of championships. So you got to say he's slightly better than Brad Stevens just because. But I think Boston would beat Miami.
Okay. In the finals, I have the Clippers against the Heat. Okay, so let's talk about the restart of the restart. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, you mean after the Jacob Blake shooting?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think the NBA did a good thing. I think that when they paused, I think it was the right thing to do, to pause and have reflection on what's going on and make a statement that basically trickled down across the sports world, not just basketball, but across the entire sports world. I think that was a good thing. But I think it takes more than just that. Like I was watching, what is it, the HBO Hard Knocks, and the Rams coach, Anthony Lynn, was on, and they were talking about not practicing because of, this thing. And he said, well, if you're not going to practice, make sure you do something. He said, I don't care what it is. Don't just be sitting home. Make sure you go out and do something. And that's the same thing I feel about the NBA protests. Okay, you protested. Now let's go out and do something. And I'll give an example of where the NBA is ringing hollow. There's an article I posted today that only 20% of the players in the NBA are registered to vote. Now that's pathetic. If you want to talk about instituting social change, you got to be able to vote. And the vote, you got to be registered to vote. So you're talking about mobilizing the vote, having all these centers, these arenas being voting places, and these NBA players aren't even registered to vote. So to me, that's like, you got to do more than just talk. You got to act. You got to walk the talk. That's what I'm saying.
David?
I don't know. I heard the story about whether, about NBA players 20%. I don't know how accurate that is. I don't know.
It's probably
all I know is we have a lot of younger players who are learning how to deal with the system. If that's true, if they're being exposed as only having 20% of the guys are registered to vote, they better get registered, as Kevin says. But that's, sometimes you got to get a swift kick in the butt to get energized, to understand you got to have a full duty. But that said, in terms of what the NBA has done in terms of putting attention on social issues, they've done a pretty good job. The voting thing, I can't speak to it. I haven't seen the numbers, officially, so I don't know. But the NBA as a league, them pausing for the killing, that was effective. Other sports leagues took their lead from the NBA, and the NBA has been a leader all across the board in dealing with social issues. They put Black Lives Matter on the court. You're going to do something, but the fact that you brought attention to it, the fact that you have made owners ante up, put money on the table to deal with different communities, for the fact that you have opened up arenas and stadiums as voting centers during the election, that's work. That's actually action. So things are getting done. Now, the players better be going into those stadiums and voting when it's time to vote. I agree with Kevin in that regard. But their action opened up arenas and stadiums and made it possible for wide open spaces, social distancing to happen in spots where you can put a lot of polling places together and get people out there to vote. That's action.
I just think, we've been protesting for years. Protests in, action is what counts. And until I see these players start doing more, putting their skin in the game, I don't care if they're out there volunteering, donating money, driving people to polls, voting booths. Until I see stuff like that happen, I think it's you can talk a good game, but the only thing that matters is action. I
hear you, but opening up stadiums was action. That's one leg of action, and you got to give him credit for that.
I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you protest, you just go back to playing basketball. You're not doing anything else. I mean, that's just like all these protests we're doing now. If we're not doing action, if there's not action following up to make change, all we're doing is protesting, and all we've been doing is protesting for years. You got to vote people into power. You got to make changes to laws. You got to put people in place who can do things.
Well, I think they're doing what they can do. And it's up to us as citizens as well to take their lead. A lot of, sports leagues have followed. Now it's up to us as grassroots folks and fans to also do our part as well. There's only so much that an athlete, a 22, 23, 24-year-old can do, but they've opened a door for all of us to walk through. And so I think
a millionaire athlete can do a lot. A 22-year-old millionaire athlete, he has tremendous influence over a young generation.
And I agree with you.
He can do a lot.
I'm saying it's up to us now to help them move forward. So I'm not really disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I'm just saying I need to see more action. That was nice what they did. I need to see some stuff happening after the fact.
Let me ask you guys this: Do you agree with them returning back to play?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it self-centered reason because you guys want to see the game, or you just really think that?
If they're not playing, we don't really hear from them. So the fact that they went back to play, they went back to the platform that's most effective. So you have about 3 or 4 million people per night watching an NBA game, and often being reminded of some of the social issues that players are making. Now, maybe they're not doing, the grassroots work that Kevin is talking about, but putting the word out there is effective. It is part of the platform. If they weren't playing, we wouldn't see that platform.
I agree with that.
They'd be doing just like Anthony Lynn said. They'd be home doing nothing, playing video games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Now, sources say that Michael Jordan was instrumental in bringing the teams together and the league owners. Are you surprised at that, David?
Well, based on reputation, theoretically, you should be surprised. But look, at some point, the only African-American majority owner in the NBA needs to step up and show his true colors. And, there's a little irony in what I say there. But Michael Jordan has power. He can use it. I think whatever the influence he had with other owners about what they need to do, because what the players are really doing was leveraging the power that they have to the owners. Michael Jordan is an owner. And I think as a black man, and again, the only majority owner in the NBA, he leveraged his power and got the rest of his owners, the white owners predominantly, to do something. And they did it. So in that regard, am I surprised? A little bit, because Michael Jordan doesn't have the reputation for being a social activist. He doesn't have the reputation for being active at all. But he's done something here. And whatever he did to help pull the other owners along, I congratulate him.
Yeah, I think it's. I think Michael Jordan's in a different position than he was as a player. When he was a young guy playing for Nike, his statement, "Republicans buy tennis shoes too," was very true. And I think he's in a much different position now than he was back then. So I'm glad to see that he has stepped forward. He has showed the conscience. I think he did something earlier too, where there was something happened earlier where he had been a little bit more active than he had been in the past. So it's a good thing that Michael is showing that he's not aloof from the situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. I am surprised, as David said, he's not known to be so active, but I'm definitely happy that he decided to step in. And I'm glad the games are back. And as you said earlier, David, they have a larger platform when they are playing than when they are not. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we picked our finalists for the NBA. Let's move on to the NFL and talk about the Washington Redskins and the mess that Dan Snyder and his organization is in down in Washington. I'm going to go to you first, Kevin.
What do you want me to say? whenever I think of Dan Snyder, I get a picture side by side of James Dolan. Worst owners in the world. It's just like, how can you take two of the most iconic franchises in the world and you just destroy them? You know, it's just like, I don't know what to say about Dan Snyder. I keep hearing these stories. Every time I turn around, it's something new. Well, now he's got this little lewd video he had created. I mean, NFL owners, just get him out. Just get him out. You know, that's all you need to do. I don't know why they don't, but it's. I can't say much about that. Much more. I can't say much more about Dan Snyder. It hadn't been said already. That's all I can say.
Well, David, I'm sure you got something to say.
I do. Hopefully, the investigation into this video will be the last straw. A lot of people in Washington. I lived in Greater Washington for 25 years. Even though I'm a Hoosier at heart, DC is my second home. My kids live there. I want them to have a good team. I want them to have a team they can cheer for. And hey, look, Dan Snyder, you know, as Kevin has said, is the worst owner in sports, bar none.
James Dolan.
Oh, James.
Well, honestly, right now, James Dolan doesn't have a video, and Dan Snyder apparently does.
No, he got Charles Oakley. That's what he got.
Okay, all right. Let's say it's the time. You know, they're bad. You know, bad owners, and DC deserves better than Dan Snyder. And maybe this is a way out. And if he slips on his banana peel of ignorance, fine, get him out.
Whoa. Well, you know me. I don't even think you need to answer it. I've been hating the Redskins and their organization for 35 years, so I'm not going to be able to give you an unbiased opinion. So we're going to move on from them. Okay. No need to hear all the negativity that's going to be spewed out my mouth about them. So we'll move on. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's a possibility that the Big Ten and some other colleges are changing their minds about coming back to play football. What do you guys think about that? Kevin, I'm going to go with you first.
That's really David's area, but I would say, like I said on an earlier broadcast, I think NCAA and FBS, they have no clue whatsoever what they're doing. They're just winging it. I mean, there's talk of playing with no fans in the stand. There's talk of playing with 25% capacity. There's talk of starting after Thanksgiving. I mean, everything is it's just ludicrous. Now, I think if they're going to play, just go ahead and play. I mean, if you're going to play, if you're going to risk these student athletes' lives, just go ahead and play. I mean, if they can create a bubble environment for these football players, and keep these football players away from the other students, I think they can probably play. But you can see the way they've been shutting down college campuses left and right. Young people are social beings. They're just going to mingle no matter what you say. So it's to me, it's a bowl of spaghetti. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen.
Okay.
The way I see it is the issues become tremendously politicized. We just the other day, you had President Trump weighing in on the Big Ten and urging the Big Ten to change its mind as a conference and play now. Well, that's a political statement from a president. What does the Big Ten represent? The Big Ten represents states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Illinois. Well, Illinois is a Democrat state, but we're talking Pennsylvania. We're talking swing states. There's only one reason that President Trump would weigh in, because he's trying to influence some of his voters to put pressure on the Big Ten, use this as a political football. You know, guys like broadcasters like Clay Travis, on his Outkick the coverage have really bastardized this thing as well. And I hate to see it become a political football. You know, the Big Ten made a decision. Fine. Whenever they play is whenever they play. If it's after Thanksgiving, fine. If it's in the spring, fine. But I just don't like seeing this become part of a political effort by a politician who doesn't really care about athletes. He's already shown he doesn't really care about people.
Okay. Well, there you go. The NFL starts in about 8 days. Are you guys excited? Do you think they'll be able to finish the season?
I think they'll finish the season. And it's going to be kind of an interesting season. I mean, 2020, we'll be talking about 2020. Our grandkids and grandkids will talk about 2020 years and years and decades from now, because this is the most unusual year in sports, most unusual year in our lives.
Kevin, what are you saying?
I zoned out. What was the question? I zoned out for a minute. I was trying to watch the score of this game.
Hey, what were we talking about? You know I don't remember.
Now, this is kind of pitiful.
We're talking about NFL.
The NFL. We're talking about the NFL, Kevin, and the season starting in just 8 days.
Well, so I do have an opinion. I do have an interesting thought on that. So they're starting the season in 8 days. They didn't play any preseason games. So to me, that says, what's that set up for? Well, why do we need preseason games anymore? Which could be one of two things. It means now we go to an 18-game schedule because we cut preseason games out, or we just cut back on preseason games, period. We don't play preseason games anymore. I mean, if they're going to go through this now and there's no injuries, there's no significant injuries. I mean, the whole thing about preseason was, getting through injuries and getting your timing and stuff together. But we're going to a season where there's no preseason games. So let's see what it looks like. I mean, this will be real interesting. It'll be real interesting to see what happens.
Well, if there's no preseason, I wouldn't miss it. But, we grew up in a time period remember back in the day when we were kids, NFL preseason was 6 games. 6 games preseason. Having no preseason games, that's fine. These guys are getting concussions. The less time that they have to bang heads and save their memories and save their thinking, the better.
I agree.
You guys were awesome today. We want to close the show and say a little bit about Chadwick Boseman. He attended Howard University here in D.C., was one of the best actors out. He played in several sports movies. Do you have anything you can elaborate on, Kevin Edmonson?
I think it's sad, man. I think Chadwick, in addition to being a great actor, he was a great person, and I think that's coming out now when you see the outpouring of love for him. He played he did all these movies over the years, the past few years, and never once did anyone know, other than his close family, that he was going through this cancer thing. And I recall seeing him recently. I don't know if it was 21 Bridges or something else. I was amazed. I said, "Wow, he lost a lot of weight. He looked really skinny," and I didn't think anything of it. I thought he was just thinning down because he was playing a role. But I will say this: he played a lot of great roles. Someone said to me, and this is one of probably the most telling things about his impact was, I had a friend of mine say to me, and she cried when she said this. She said someone said to her, "How do you tell your kids that Black Panther is dead?" Mm-hmm. And that was powerful because he played such a powerful role. It represented so much to Black people as a community. So it's sad to see him go. Really, really, really sad.
I think about Chadwick Boseman, not just as somebody who went to Howard University. which is significant. And, those of us with DC connections, all three of us have a DC connection, and I've got a Howard University connection and having taught there as well. We're proud of Chadwick Boseman, but more than anything else, I look at it the fact that, his transcendent role as T'Challa, the Black Panther, to be a young Black man, so inspiring to play a superhero. God must have anointed that to happen for him to become this iconic player, and acting so well, and to be able to do it in such a way that none of us knew what he was battling. And his death was shocking because we didn't know, but his acting, his character was such that it's something that we should all look up to. And he will be sorely missed.
Yeah, great. Well, gentlemen, it's always an honor and a privilege to shoot the breeze with you guys on sports. You guys are very knowledgeable and very professional. Thank you guys for helping recover my mistakes from my Alzheimer's. Kevin, thanks for helping me out. You guys are awesome. We'll be back next week. We have a very special guest coming up. We will announce it tomorrow. And thank you guys for joining. I'm going to say goodbye on behalf of Kevin Edmonson in Atlanta, David Burnett in Indianapolis, Earl Rush from DC. You guys, thank you so much. Hope to see you again very soon. Have a very blessed and productive evening.
Good night.
Good night.